Jason from TechAU here. Today we're going to be talking about the Tesla Model 3 configurator in Australia, all through the options. The pricing came out a couple of weeks ago, but I think it's important to run you through what's on the table there, what we've got to select from in Australia, and of course the price and whether you decide to go ahead and buy one. So to start, we're going to kick off with basically head to the website, tesla.com, and custom order is where we're going to start. So from here, we're going to select our location. I'm in Victoria, so I'm going to use that as the example. So the prices will reflect that as I go through. Yours might change slightly. So basically to start with, we'll kick it off with the Standard Range Plus Edition, which starts at 66,000 Australian. Now that's before on-roads. What Tesla do is they give you the driveway price and update that on the fly as you choose different options through the configurator. So of course the standard range is just dealing with the rear wheel drive, and so that's one electric engine at the rear of the car. That's good for 460 kilometers of range, and that's something we need to talk about. So this underneath has NEDC rating, so that's a European standard for rating, and basically it's been criticized for the accuracy, and so don't expect that you're going to take a journey of 450 kilometers on a single charge and make it there. Really what you're talking about probably is in the range of 400 to 420 Ks, because you've got things like uphill, you've got things like the temperature that's affecting the battery, whether you're using heating and cooling in the car. So all of those kind of things contribute to how much energy is used and how far that range is. So moving on from that, we've got the top speed, which is 225 kilometers. Obviously got a couple of parameters, speed limits being one, but also the tire capability as well. People often forget that not all tyres are rated for those kinds of speeds. And in Australia, really, there's no Autobahn like there is in Germany. So you're really talking about those kind of speeds would only be something you'd be able to look at the track. The 0 to 100 time is 5.6 seconds, which is really impressive for a car at that price point. But we'll talk about how we can do better than that in just a second. So moving on now, that 66,000 is 71,285 drive away. But of course, our other option is the performance model. We're stepping up to 85,000 here, so that's quite a jump from the 66. But what we get for that extra money is I think it's easy enough for a lot of people to justify that jump. So 560 kilometers of range, and that's probably the biggest difference, is that you're now talking about almost 100 kilometers more of range. So again, don't think you're getting anywhere near 560 in reality. It's probably more likely 500 to 520 in actual reality, in real world terms. So just take that into consideration. Something I plan on doing is a trip from here in Wodonga to Melbourne, 350 Ks. You could avoid a stop at your rail to recharge if you've got the right vehicle. Whereas the other one, you might have to stop, especially if you're planning on doing some driving in the city once you're there. So moving on, top speed, 261. Now, this is a little contentious because that is the top speed if you choose an option further down the track. It's not actually leaving configurations as they are, not actually the top speed of the vehicle, but we'll deal with that in just a second. The 0 to 100 time, a very impressive, amazing 3.4 seconds. There are only fairly few cars ahead of that, and those are typically supercars that could beat this car on the street. So it's going to make for some very sad Holden Commodore drivers that try and take you at the lights. 3.4 seconds is just kind of crazy for a car like this. So, but it's going to be one hell of a ride. And after having reviewed Teslas in the past, I know that speed, I love it, I'm addicted to it. So the performance model is definitely one that stands out for me. So moving on, we've basically also got to talk about the interior. So underneath the rear wheel drive option or the Standard Range Plus, there's a link to say partial premium interior. We click on that and we get a list of basically what's included by default. So all interiors include the tinted glass roof for ultraviolet protection. So that amazing glass roof at the front and the back means your passengers and yourself as a driver or a passenger don't get cooked, which is good. Especially coming into that hot summer sun, that's going to be an issue for us. Auto dimming, power folding, heated side mirrors, that's great, that's everywhere. Music and media over Bluetooth, and custom driver profiles. So if you share a car with your significant other, you can both have driver profiles, or maybe you're talking about more people than that. You can actually, some other vehicle manufacturers only allow you to have 2 or 3. Our Honda CR-V, for example, has 2 driver profiles. and 2 keys, whereas this is all digital. So essentially that could be a longer list. You might have 10 people driving the car regularly. Moving between the separation between the partial and the premium interior, 12-way power adjustable front and rear heated seats in the premium interior. The premium audio, so 14 speakers, 1 subwoofer, 2 amps, and they call it immersive sound. But basically that's pretty kick-ass audio system. Again, you've got to opt up for the premium for that. Next, you've got the big difference is satellite view and live traffic. So it's a bit disappointing that if you choose the entry-level model, that you're missing out on that. So we know that Teslas have this inbuilt SIM card in the car, and obviously that's leveraged heavily by Tesla in their autonomous efforts. They're doing a lot of learning and taking a lot of the video from the car, its cameras, its sensors, and sending that back to Tesla to learn from. But what you need to know is that in the standard edition, you're not able to leverage all of that data connection for live traffic. So is it a big deal? You could decide to mount your phone and use Google Maps or something manually, but given that you've got this nice 15-inch touchscreen display in the center of the car with pretty great maps, you wish that you could use that. So that's an important distinguishment between the two sets of interiors. So the other things, the speakers and the seats, maybe not the biggest deal, but for me, that's one of the big things that separates the two. So you get standard maps and navigation in the standard one. We get LED fog lamps in both, that's fine. And then the center console with storage, you get 4 USB ports and 2 smartphones can dock in the front of it there. It's angled back where those smartphones sit, and there's also accessories where you can have wireless charging underneath that, which is perfect and something I think I would add. But generally, you want to be careful that when you accelerate, certainly with performance, that those phones don't go flying. So that's kind of the big differences, and I wanted to talk through those because as you choose between these two options, the 66,000, the 85,000, they are important differences along with the drivetrain and the single or dual motors. Yeah, that's the biggest difference. So we move now from step 1 to step 2, which is exterior. There are really not a lot of options as you go through this configurator. The first one here you're going to choose is from solid black. It's included by default with no extra price. Stepping up to midnight silver metallic, you're at $1,400 extra for that. Again, if we keep jumping up, the price will go up for the different paint options. A deep blue metallic is $1,400. Pearl white multi-coat, I personally love that, $2,100. And the red multi-coat, the most extreme at $2,800. So the next step is wheels. And in Australia, we only really get one option by default, unless you tick the next box, which costs you some money. So with the performance model selected, you get to select the performance upgrade. So it's the Model 3 performance with a performance upgrade, then you get the special wheels. This option costs you $6,200 in Australia. And for that, you do get the 20-inch premium wheels, the performance wheels, upgraded from the 18-inch aero wheels. The performance brakes, so the red calipers, they look pretty nice, but they also stop you a lot better. Carbon fiber spoiler on the back, lowered suspension. So that also ties in with the final one, which is track mode. And this is where we need to talk about the actual performance. So you'll note one of these bullet points here suggests that increased top speed from 233 to 261. But remembering on our previous screen, we were told that the top speed already was 261. This is what I mean, that it's a little bit, it's not the nicest thing for the user to see that initial speed. That's not actually the car they get unless you tick this box. I think by default, it should be the lower speed. It should really be 233. And then coming in here, ticking the box, you're jumping up to 261. The important thing is that 0 to 100 time of 3.4 seconds. I have confirmed with Tesla that is across the board of the performance models. Does not matter whether you tick this upgrade or not, the acceleration is the same. So that's great to have confirmed because there was some conjecture online about was that actually changing and the values on the website not actually reflecting it accurately. I have confirmed that is the case. So that track mode will allow you to do things that some drivers will never use, and so that might not be an incentive. Certainly visually, those wheels look fantastic. I think the black turbines from the Model X, the Model S, they look fantastic as well. Unfortunately not offered, certainly from Tesla on the Model 3. So The only other thing here is alloy pedals. So you've got obviously being an auto, you've got accelerator and brake. So I don't personally rate that as very much of an option. I wouldn't use that to justify much of the $6,200 upgrade here. Really, if you're talking about getting the absolute performance, the fastest Model 3 you can, that's when you're going to tick the box and be able to stop it with those big brakes. So next step is the interior, step 3. And again, we're fairly limited in Australia. We don't have that white option that is available in the Model X or even overseas. So you see that white interior and you'd have a choice here between all black or a white interior. Unfortunately, it's black, so you better like black. It's the only option we've got. So this just runs you through the same inclusions that we looked at earlier, so I won't spend any time on that. But that interior, obviously very minimal. That no dials and anything in front of the driver. It's all looking up to the touchscreen display. And something we notice in the right-hand drive screenshots is that all the display has been flipped for a right-hand drive. So putting the driver information, the speed, the park, or vehicles, the doors open on the vehicle, that sort of thing, all on the right-hand side closest to the driver, which makes sense. And then your mapping, your nav and music and everything else would be over on the left. So going to next, then we get into our options around Autopilot. Now, every vehicle made since the start of the year is getting Autopilot for free, so we knew that. But really, Tesla kind of turned their terminology for their autonomous efforts from Autopilot to self-driving. And so you'll see that in the features that we get here. So really, Autopilot, what it does is allows the car to steer for itself. So it's doing not lane keeping like a lot of cars do, but actually lane centering. So it works out where the white lines are, and it will center your car in the middle of that. And it just stays in the middle, which is fantastic. If you've ever driven those cars that sort of bounce off each one of the white lines, it's kind of annoying to ride in. And again, it's doing like the adaptive cruise control that you found in many other vehicles. So really, you don't have to worry about keeping in the lane or accelerating and braking from the car ahead of you. So if you're somebody who commutes often or you're doing highway driving, those two profiles of driving are really made a lot simpler by having that Autopilot. And Tesla does that better than anybody at the moment. The next step is full self-driving. So this is where you have an awkward discussion in Australia because none of this is really approved for Australian use at this time. So the option to enable full self-driving is $8,500. Now you've got to ask yourself, how do I justify this thing that I won't actually get in my car when I get it delivered? So you're really talking about an investment in the future. And Tesla used to penalize you financially, used to pay more if you bought it afterwards, but now they've eliminated that and they've basically said if you buy it before or after, you're gonna pay the same price, which is awesome. Now, something to pay attention to is when you go and buy your Tesla from when you buy this option ahead of the delivery, you're going to be paying that $8,500, and then your luxury car tax gets calculated on the final price of the car. So given that it's a software unlock, you'd be smarter to not buy it with the car and then enable it afterwards because you're not paying that financial penalty. There's an exception to that. And that's what happened recently in the 2 weeks since this configurator went live, and that is the price of self-driving has actually increased. So it was $7,100 and now it's $8,500, and there's really no way for us to tell where that's going to stop. So the car is due for delivery. We've got estimated delivery in August down the bottom here. So between now, which is the 15th of June, and August, we may see more increases or changes to that price. And Elon has tweeted that price will increase over time. We just probably didn't expect it to increase within 2 weeks. So, all right. So if you make these decisions, you're going to get, at the moment, this is what it offers in America. Auto lane change, so that's on the highway, it's going to change lanes for you. Again, that's pretty amazing, and it's making life easy for you. Auto park, so it's a bit annoying that you have to spend this kind of money and your car doesn't park itself. And when it does, certainly from the videos online, it's fairly slow and it's not the best implementation of auto parking. But if you're somebody who relies on that, maybe it's very useful for you. Coming later this year, it says. Coming later this year, that's an interesting timeline they've given themselves. Again, because this is needing regulatory approval in Australia, so I'm not sure why it says that, given they can't guarantee that. But the ability to recognize and respond to traffic lights and stop signs. That's really a fundamental difference between this car and what any other car is doing on the road right now. That ability to understand what the traffic situation is and respond dynamically about it really allows this car to do something that I wish they had done for a while. So if you're following another car, adaptive cruise control will stop you at a set of lights because it's based on your distance to the car ahead of you. But if you're the first car in the queue, it would let you drive straight through a red light. And that's incredibly dangerous, obviously, and it means that you have to be paying attention 100% of the time. If your car starts to recognize what that intersection is like and it's got a red light and it's going to stop you, that's a fundamental difference in that driving experience, and it makes it far, far safer. So the next thing is automatic driving on city streets. So while we're talking about autopilot, most of that has really been engineered to do it on the freeways. So freeways or highways, the sort of extended driving. So if I was driving from here to Melbourne, I could kick it on autopilot and for the most part get there without really having too much input into the steering wheel. Unlocking that for every residential street means that you could do your daily commute from home to work without really having to drive the thing. So that's a huge step forward as well in terms of your input and effort into the car. The next is summon. So we've probably seen enough videos online where the car will come to you. I even did a demo of it with a Model X where you can get within 1.5 meters of it, use the mobile app and move it forward and reverse. That's a sort of a limitation of how it is at the moment, but what they're talking about in the future is an enhanced summon. And what that will give you is the ability just to have the car come and pick you up. So if you've parked it out in the middle of a car park and it's raining and you want to walk out of the shopping center and call it over to pick you up, you could potentially do that, which is really great. So that is coming, but to Australia, we don't know when. The final one is that navigate to autopilot. So this is getting what you've got out of your residential area and you kicked on autopilot. It will take you onto the freeway and then it will get you off the freeway when you need to exit. So it's really, they're getting closer and closer, stepping towards the ability where it's just going to drive you wherever you need to go. So that's not too far away where it's not going to require you to drive, but these are the stepping stones that we need to take to get there. So that option again is $8,500. It's a lot of money. Not everyone really can stomach that. And again, there's no penalty for buying it afterwards, assuming the price doesn't go up between now and then. So next, you're at step 5, and this is something they've changed recently, and that is the upsell to doing solar and Powerwall at your house. So you can request a quote through here. It doesn't give you anything about pricing on this. But obviously that would be the dream, that you have the electric vehicle, you have the solar panels on the roof of the garage, and Powerwall in the garage to basically accumulate the storage, store that energy from the sun during the day, and then use it to charge your vehicle overnight. So the electric vehicle would be basically free to use at that point. That's kind of an amazing proposition. It's going to cost you 15 to 20 grand to have that setup put in, but obviously then your expenses, your running expenses don't just minimize, they drop completely to zero. So when you're talking about ongoing maintenance costs, it's really low in terms of there's less things to maintain. Your biggest expense is going to be tires over the long term. Certainly with a sort of the performance model, you might be keen to enjoy those tires as much as they can handle. And then, we don't actually know how many Ks they're going to get out of them, but we'll find out for you and report back, I guess, is the answer on that. But so that's the dream, is to minimize your expenses that are ongoing. So when you're thinking about this number that you're going to pay for the Tesla, you really need to encompass all of those calculations into your modeling. And I've done spreadsheets to calculate what it looks like. Tesla use a 5-year period for the reduction in expenses on fuel versus recharging. But it depends on your plan for the vehicle. I personally would plan on having a vehicle 15 to 20 years. And so that's the kind of calculation of if you've got a saving every year, well, how many years are you going to have that saving for? And then, yes, you're paying the penalty for that up front. You're paying the premium up front, but you realize that benefit over the long term. Cool. So imagine this is it. You scroll down here. It says you're going to pay $3,000 for the deposit to lock in your order. And again, we're seeing that as an August delivery time. So once that first ship is full, then imagine that estimation of delivery will be blown out by a month or two. And remember, they opened the configurator for four markets on the same day they did for us. So it's important that that we, I guess, compete aggressively for the Teslas that are coming off the production line. But yeah, so let's walk through what the final price looks like. So if you were to go back and do all of the options, so performance at the start, exterior, you've got the performance upgrade ticked, you go through, actually that's it, yeah, so red multi-coat, so the most expensive paint, and you're ticking on the full self-driving. By the time you get to payment, and this again is in Victoria, you would be looking at $118,469. That's a fair chunk of change, right? So that's the price that you drive away for. The price and the estimated savings, so they're calculating over 5 years, you're going to have around $6,000 worth of savings. Right, but have a look at the other option. If we drop it back to the base model, so the standard range plus, the black included paint, interior is normal, autopilot is off, full self-driving is off, and let's scroll down. So that 66,000 starts to be 71,000 or 65,600 if you look at their estimated savings. So 71,000, okay, it's still a lot of money. If you're somebody who's used to buying $20,000 and $30,000 cars, 70, you might be thinking in your head, well, I can buy 2 or 3 cars, but nobody needs 2 or 3 cars, so you don't do that. You work out in your head what you can justify, what you can afford, what it's going to cost you to repay a loan on the car, or if you've saved really well, you're in a position to be able to buy that. A lot of people do buy cars in that price bracket, somewhere between 60 and 100. Once you tip over 100, there's certainly less people who are in that category. So I'd imagine a lot of the sales will come from people choosing performance and then maybe picking their favorite paint. Then they're going to come through and leaving autopilot off. So a fairly typical sort of estimated price might be more 97.4, coming into that under the 100 price tag. So you can blow this out, pricing details, and we go down and we've got, this is the brutal one. The vehicle actually costs $87,975, but you've got luxury car tax of $3,734. Then you're talking about stamp duty in Victoria, $4,774. Different states have a significantly different amount of stamp duty, but you can't really change where you live, so you kind of got to suck it up. Local registration cost is $230, and then local CTP $521. And then a local plate fee, so $175. So we'll obviously have to work through what happens if you choose a slimline plate or a custom plate, then the price of the plates are going to be more. And can you do that through Tesla Direct, or do they sell you a default plate and then you have to go and source that yourself afterwards? Basically, all that adds up to $9,434 on top of the vehicle purchase price, which brings us up to the $97,400. So if you place that order, you pay $3,000 as I mentioned, and then obviously that comes off the price of the vehicle. If you're going to do this, if you're going to do any of this, I suggest you start here. You want to start with a referral link. Somebody like myself has put together a page, and this is a hub for all the Tesla content that's coming through TechAU. And at free supercharging, use this referral link. You click on the link, and what this will do is gets 1,500 kilometers of free supercharging for you as the vehicle purchaser that came through a referral link like this. And then for myself as well, the referrer, I also get that 1,500. So far, 7 amazing, kind, generous people have used my referral link. So that's really helping justify the cost of the vehicle as well, because you're going to have as much as 6 months of free driving by supercharging. And we happen to have a supercharger location with 6 bays in Wodonga, which is really handy for me, which is only about 5 minutes drive away. So 7 people ordered so far. That's kind of great. And yeah, that's kind of the summary. That's kind of the rundown of buying a Tesla Model 3 in Australia. It's not as many options as certainly something like the Jaguar I-Pace, even though that's equally an electric vehicle. It's actually more expensive. It does less range. So the entry into the market of the Australian market for the Model 3 actually does a lot to the rest of the industry. It makes them revise what they're charging. There's a lot of electric cars that are cheaper than the Model 3, but their range is significantly lower. You're only talking about 200 to 300 k's of range. So I would look at a vehicle as needing to service my needs to do the daily drives, but also to do the long road trips. And if it's a trip from here to Melbourne, yes, there's going to be superchargers along the way in somewhere like Euroa. Over time, there'll be more and more service stations that add them. And also what we've got in the Model 3 is the ability to use the CCS plug. So there'll be an adapter to be able to plug into the networks, the other supercharger networks that are rolling out. But you will, of course, you'll pay for those. It's not like the Tesla superchargers. The rates will be different. So just pay attention to that. Anyway, that's probably the rundown. That's probably where we'll leave it for this video. If you've enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe, make sure you like the video, and leave a comment below.